What's up guys, my name is Westy, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at my initial reactions for the Battlefield 4 reveal that went live last night in San Francisco and Stockholm. So first of all, I just want to say I'm pretty excited. The footage that I have actually watched is actually quite different to what Battlefield 3 looks like. Just as the first thing I'm going to say, a lot of people thought that Battlefield 4 was going to be exactly the same as Battlefield 3, just an improved version, but I've got some different opinions. I have to say there are some big differences. But first of all, I just want to talk about the screenshots that you've been looking at. These were officially released on the Battlefield website last night when the embargo lifted for all of the footage that was at the reveal. That's now all on the website as well. Links are in the description to all the footage that I'm going to be showing you, and one more little bit of footage was an actual TV trailer for Battlefield 3, but that has some copyrighted music in it by Rihanna, so I can't show you that, but the link is in the description for it. This isn't going to be a play-by-play video by any means. I don't want to bore you guys with 17 minutes of gameplay, so I'm just going to pick out my favourite parts and the things that I think are most controversial, or the bits that I want to talk about, and of course you can watch the whole footage for yourself and then maybe leave what you think in the comments. So the footage we're going to be looking at is a sequence taken from the single player of Battlefield 4, and it's called Fishing in Baku. First thing I want to touch on is the graphics. Obviously that is one of the most important things about Battlefield 4 for me, because I love Frostbite in Battlefield 3, but for Battlefield 4 we're looking at Frostbite 3. Now personally I don't think it looks amazingly different to Battlefield 4 in terms of how the graphic quality looks. Obviously it looks slightly different to Battlefield 4, but in terms of quality I think it's more Frostbite 2.5. So what I think DICE have done is sort of matured the Frostbite engine from 2.0 to 2.5, but rebranded it as Frostbite 3. But I have to say, just the way that you interact with the environment in some of these sort of shots that I'm showing you here, the way that birds fly out at you and all the things that are going on in the sky, the jumbo jet, the streaks of air that are coming across it, even the explosions you can see right here, are just phenomenal. They look great. Now, coming along to the first big talking point that I found in the video was the introduction of a dual sight system. Now, the footage of this is actually on the screen right now, and I'll pause it exactly where he switches sights. But if any of you have played Medal of Honor, they have a dual sight system in that game, where if you've got a longer range sight, you can actually switch to your iron sights for closer range combat, even though you've got, let's say, an ACOG or a 3.4 times scope on your gun. And I think this is going to change up the battle, and it's just sort of bringing something to Battlefield that other games have integrated before, and I think it brings something new, something fresh. Say you're coming in at close quarters combat, you don't want to be using that 4x scope, you can just flick around to your iron sights and take that enemy out. One thing I'd point out as well is it's near instantaneous. When you flick that gun round, just sort of like, I think it's about 30 degrees, you flick it to the left or the right, something like that. But there's no sort of delay from when you want to flick from your ACOG all the way around to sort of like your iron sight. That means you pretty much, it's an instant decision, but you're not going to get any penalty for it. Next thing I want to talk about is spotting. Now, a lot of other YouTubers have already picked up on this, but I re-looked through the video and actually watched specifically for this part. And I have to say, this is a major departure from what we've seen for spotting in previous Battlefield titles. The way that spotting works in the footage that we've actually got here is that your character has to take their hands off the gun and push some sort of device on their sort of like chest or their vest, bullet vest that they're wearing. So it means that you're actually, it's going to be an animation from when you push the button on your keyboard or your controller, whatever. You're actually going to have to stop firing and then do an animation in order to spot. And I think that's a little bit different and might cause some controversy. If you think about it right now in Battlefield 3, when you're spotting, all you have to do is just hit a button, and automatically the little red Doritos come up above the enemies' heads and you can take people out. But now you're going to have to make a conscious decision as to whether you want to stop firing in the middle of a fight in order to light up the enemies in front of you and maybe help out your team. So effectively you could be making a decision as to whether you're going to die for your team but you've spotted the enemies up so it's easier for them to kill them, or are you going to carry on trying to take enemies out that you might not be able to see clearly. I think this is pretty controversial and could sort of divide people on how they think that spotting systems should work, but I think it's bringing a little bit more tactics into Battlefield 4, and I want to see how this plays out, but of course we don't know yet because we haven't seen any more footage, so we'll only know when we see that in the future. And one final thing I want to just quickly talk about is a tiny little sequence in it. There's a soldier hiding behind some sort of reinforced concrete wall, and there's a 50 cal sort of machine gun firing down at him. Now, if you remember in Battlefield 3, we had a lot of problems with suppression, whereas at the start of the game people thought it didn't work right, and then DICE tried to change it, and people still don't really, it's very divided. about how people feel about suppression. But as you'll notice in the clip I'm actually playing, this guy's being rained down on with a 50 cal machine gun. There's no suppression here. Now, this is quite interesting. I don't know if this is going to transfer across to multiplayer, obviously we don't know that. But of course during the single player the graphics are better because you're not required to have an internet connection to play, so you don't have to pipeline all this graphical content down towards your computer or your console or whatever. But this is the single player, so there's no suppression in it. And with a single player they build the multiplayer off the single player. Obviously some maps from the single player from Battlefield 3 are in the multiplayer. So it sort of all works out, and then perhaps we could be seeing Battlefield 4 without suppression. And that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I didn't really like suppression in Battlefield 3. I didn't really like the way it was implemented, because I felt that the way it sort of threw your gun off target when you're being fired at. I understand the blurring of the vision and maybe a slight more recoil where you're sort of panicking because you're being fired at, but the fact that you completely miss your bullets even if you're still firing at somebody was completely ridiculous. So perhaps in Battlefield 4 we could be seeing a radical overhaul for suppression, or perhaps that it's been removed completely. So that's my initial thoughts for the Battlefield 4 footage that we've seen so far. I think it looks extremely interesting and I'm extremely pumped for it. I can't wait to see some more footage. Obviously they're going to release some into the future. That's a quick point I'm actually going to mention. Other YouTubers that were at the conference last night in San Francisco did get a chance to speak to the DICE developers and of course Crash7800, the community manager for Battlefield as well. And he hinted that more information is going to be starting to be released up and towards the Battlefield 4 actual release of the game. So expect to see more and more information coming out over the next few months about Battlefield 4, perhaps confirming multiplayer sort of details and stuff like that. I'm not particularly sure, but just be sure to keep your ears open for any information that might be coming out. And of course if you want to know all that information, then make sure you stay subscribed to my channel, because you can pretty much be sure that I'll have covered it for you. Anyway, thanks for watching guys. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a like. It really does help me out, and comments are always appreciated as well. I've been Westy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
You'll back me up, right?